come in whenever I want. What's happening, YouTube? It's your boy BountyTank checking in. Today we have a special guest. Yes, Tony Sylvester, the Italian Stallion. This is a very good friend of mine. Also, he is the owner of Sly Bail Bonds. He's been in the game for a very, very long time, man. He gonna spit some jewels, educate a little bit. We're gonna hit a couple topics. One being bail reform, which is a big topic going on right now.
It's the latest official to say the state's new criminal justice reform laws need to be changed.
He's trying to disavow that he knew about this early release of these prisoners based on the new bail reform.
So there are some distinctions as to which crimes could be eligible for no bail, correct? But there's some gray areas that law enforcement are worried about, something that might be initially considered violent.
They're doing away with bail, which will mean 900 inmates are going to be released by January.
But first, how long have you been in the game?
I don't want to tell anybody because it's embarrassing, but I shaved off my white beard today, so you probably wouldn't know I need that. But I've been doing this a little over 18 years.
So quick, just give you a brief history of how we met. Man, it's about, has it been 9 years, 8 years?
I think it's been about 8.
It's probably about 8 years, man. When I first moved back to Ohio, I was hitting bondsmen up, trying to find cases. And this was back, man, just back in the day. He was still getting in. He was in the beginning stages, wasn't he, kind of?
I had just went out on my own.
Okay.
Yeah, not that long ago, maybe but a couple years, yeah.
So we was looking for a guy who was actually hard as shit to find, which we'll never bond him out again. But wind up helping him with that, wind up finding the dude, and it's been uphill ever since then. But quick, what is bail reform?
Well, what it is really in a lot of ways, it's the elimination of bail, any kind of monetary bail. That's what it truly is, which ends up leaving you in a position where generally the government decides either you get out or you don't. That's what it's boiled down to in practice. In theory, it is reform meant to alleviate jail overcrowding and to limit the number of crimes that are actually bail eligible. So for example, in theory, let's say you had a petty theft charge and that held a bond, schedule bond of $500 cash, let's say. That poor kid that stole the candy bar might sit in jail 48 or 72 hours before he sees a judge, and if he's not able to make that bail, he would potentially be losing a job or whatever circumstances. The kind of noble aim of bail reform is to take that crime, basically nuisance level crime, victimless crime, not violent crime, and make them summonable. In other words, those people should not be clogging up the system unless they're repeat offenders or they're chronic offenders or dangerous. Those people should be basically released without bail unless there's a reason to keep them, which as a bondsman that makes my living, I tend to agree. If you're not a danger to the community and you're not a flight risk, maybe you don't need bail. And that's strange coming from a bondsman. But in practice, what's happened is the people writing the laws don't really understand how bail works because a lot of them are not involved in the system. So you get something like is now happening in New York where there's just a laundry list of things that if you're charged with them, they're not allowed to take any consideration or judicial discretion. They have to issue you a summons. And the things on that list go far beyond nuisance level misdemeanor crime.
Right. So, and that brings us to the point of us being bondsmen. In your words, explain what is our purpose? Why are we here?
The bondsman serves two functions, and one leads into the other. The primary purpose of bail, as it's stated, and has been since English common law, is to ensure the appearance of the accused. And so someone puts up something of value under the theory that you want it back, so you're going to return to get it. Now that's boiled down to money, but it could be property, could, in their English common law, could have been a lot of things, but it's boiled down to cold, hard cash. The ancillary benefit to people is that when you're out on bond and a professional bondsman guarantees your appearance, there's kind of the added incentive of public safety, because if you want to stay out of jail, you're going to act right. If you break the conditions of your bond, you're fleeing from the bondsman. So it's hard to commit a lot of new crime when you're running from your old crime because you're being pursued to be put back in jail. Otherwise, if you're just left hanging out there, and I guess there's no deterrent, you can do whatever you want.
And you know, obviously what's going on right now, there's a ton of states trying to get rid of us. There's already been situations where they try to get rid of us out here. What do you think the effect is going to be? I mean, it's already happened in states like Jersey, obviously New York right now, they're trying to do it in California. What do you think is going to happen just getting rid of us, getting rid of bondsmen, period? What do you think is going to be, you know, what's going to manifest out of that?
I think there are two things that happen, and I think your most immediate effect in a state like, let's say, New Jersey, where they didn't actually totally eliminate bail, but they've made it, the criteria to actually get to the point where you set a bond is so precise that a judge almost never gets through a laundry list of considerations that go down like a menu, bail so far down, it rarely ever happens on felony cases. So the first thing that happens is you see a decrease in the jail population and an increase in crime because they can no longer, they either will not or cannot hold these people. So they're back into the community, and recidivism and other things, because there's no deterrence anymore. The threat of jail is the deterrence. Our entire criminal justice system is based on the deterrence theory of punishment, which predicates on two things: that you're actually scared and that the punishment is swift. And so those two factors are lost. So what you see is an increase in crime and a decrease in jail. Well, about the third or fourth time somebody comes in front of a judge for the same thing, now they go, I can't set bail, but what I can do is preventatively detain you, which means I am now going to remand you into custody with no bail. So then you start remanding people in preventative detention on holds. Now the jail population starts to go back up because you're warehousing people with no way of getting out. That is the long-term effect. And the problem is you have an Eighth Amendment right to bail in reasonable circumstances. So there are some, in the long term, there are some constitutional issues which have yet to be examined that, if this is allowed to run its course, would probably make its way to the United States Supreme Court.
I think a lot of people get the misconception about bondsmen only because they're ignorant. They don't know we're actually here to help. Without us, we use example in Akron and Canton. We're helping people to get out of jail that can't afford it. I mean, our economy is a lot different from California, New York. So say they give a $10,000 bond, 10%, which is $1,000. May not sound much to certain people, but in an area where the economy is low, that's a lot of money. So that's what we're placed here to help people who can't necessarily afford that $1,000. We're gonna finance you. And I know Tony and me also, we'll bend over back to help people, sometimes putting ourselves in the hole to help these people get out of jail. So we're actually doing the community justice. We're clearing out the jails. We're giving people second chances, and then we're holding people accountable. That's another thing. Once we get them out, they're not just running out there crazy. We're holding them accountable. We're making sure they're not going back out breaking the same laws. Otherwise, we put them back in jail. So there's someone always just watching them. And you used the term also with extension of parole.
We are pretrial probation. Mm-hmm. We are essentially the analog to probation pretrial. In other words, the judge can give whatever conditions on bond, and if we bond them out, we're responsible for the enforcement of that condition. And if they break the conditions, then it becomes our responsibility to reinsert them back into jail or cure the defect. There have been times, I know you've done it, I've done it, where somebody screwed up, but it hasn't been a huge deal. We've taken him in front of the judge and said, Your Honor, if he's willing to fix it, we'll stay on the bond. We're here to help and to get you there. And the other thing that we do as bondsmen that is just part of the process that is omitted just because everyone accepts it but nobody stops to think about it is, if you've got somebody, let's say they got 5 DUIs, and mom having to come and bond Junior out of jail at 2 in the morning creates a scenario where they can no longer ignore the problem. There's now accountability in the community and in the family. Mom has to make a choice. Either she's going to accept responsibility for Junior and come get him and confront the problem with chronic situations, or she's going to make the decision to leave him in jail and let him dry out. What bail reform does is take that responsibility out of the hands of the community and of their loved ones that know them and arbitrarily place that power in the hands of the government.
What's going on in New York? It's chaos right now.
New York passed a bail reform package that took effect January 1st. And essentially what it did is it took a list of crimes. And some things are nonviolent property crime, but some are as serious as vehicular homicide, assault, burglary, what we consider how they label the felonies are different, but we consider mid to serious felonies. And they made them non-bail eligible, which means the judge has no discretion to hold them and no discretion to set bail. By statute, by mandate, they have to release them. They can either hold them for an arraignment in some cases, and the judge is required to let them out. He can place non-monetary conditions. He can say they check in with pretrial release, a social worker, but he cannot hold them. Or in most cases, they're basically booked at a precinct house and given a summons. And that's what's happening more prevalently, is they're just being released on the scene with a summons.
And I know you told me about an example, someone committed vehicular homicide and got right back out of jail. I mean, can you go more detail about that?
I'm gonna generalize because I don't know the names off the top of my head and I don't know all the facts of the case, but the basic facts are the person was driving without a license and was not a citizen, was an illegal alien. Struck a pedestrian. It was a female, I believe she was walking with her son. Pedestrian dies, he skips, takes off on the scene. Police have to put together through the traffic investigation who he is, probably using traffic cams or whatever for the car. They hunt him down, they find him, they take him into custody, and because New York's a sanctuary state, no immigration hold applies. Sanctuary city, rather. So he is summoned. They cannot hold him because vehicular homicide is on the list of no longer bailable offenses. That judge, that sheriff, that police officer has no discretion. By law, they charge him, they get his information, they issue him a summons, he's back out on the street. I mean, no one in the system has any discretion to detain him.
Man, his credit, that's scary. I know a couple cops in New York right now that are furious. I mean, people are no longer fearing the law. I mean, when you think about it, why would you fear the law if nothing's gonna happen? It's gonna get a slap on the wrist. There's so many, he sent me a list of some of the laws, some of the crimes you can commit and get right back out. One of them that really bothered me was the Sex Offender Registry. They don't register, nothing happens. And that's fucking scary. I mean, those who have kids, I mean, you get in the mail, you get the brochures showing that there's a sex offender that stays here. I mean, they don't have to no more. I mean, just a slap on the wrist, nothing happens. So, I mean, I think people not gonna care until something seriously happens to them, man. I mean, it's crazy. And I hope it never comes here. I mean, so do you think it's just a lack, people that are pushing for bail reform, it's just a lack of education? They don't really know what they're pushing for, or they're just looking at it one-sided?
I think you have two groups. I think you have a very ideologue, almost socialist, left-wing core of people that are, it's almost like a religion and there is no talking to them and they just want all monetary conditions of bail released, done, erased, boom. They want a system where the government has the sole means of control and you either get out or you don't, and they want an equal result. All they're worried about is an equal result. Even if the net result for everyone is worse, as long as it's equal, that's all they care about. Even if the result is bad for everyone, including society, as long as no one is treated any different, that's all they care about. Then you have a second group of people, which I believe to be the majority, which are closer to the middle, who are doing the right thing the right thing for the wrong reasons. In other words, it is a noble goal. The system can always be tweaked. People are lost in the system. That's why they call it the system. There are people that are held in that jail that either didn't commit the crime or perhaps are not dangerous or not a flight risk for nonviolent property crimes that perhaps should not be held on bail. As a guy that makes his living getting people out of jail, I can tell you that there are some common sense reforms that could accomplish easing the jail overcrowding and eliminating those low-level nonviolent offenders while still ensuring public safety. The problem is that these are the people, as you say, that aren't educated. So they're throwing the baby out with the bathwater, painting with a broad brush and just saying, well, they don't know when they think about it that vehicular homicide might not be in the same bucket as petty theft. But when you've got 400 legislatures and everybody, you got too many chiefs and not enough Indians, you get these type of situations where what you nobly wanted in theory is not what you end up getting in the final product.